This series is absolutely bonkers, and I love it so very, very much. Looking back in hindsight, I should have seen the hit and run coming, but I didn't. This gag, this goof, this joke, this scene was absolutely hilarious and even one-upped episode 1 when Sakura got hit and died. I love that scene so much because they did pretty much a near identical thing. They used the music, they used the atmosphere to make you feel good, make you feel like things would be alright. And sure, you can look at Kotaro and say like, oh yeah, he's definitely someone who would hit one of his own zombie idols. But it felt safe. It really did. And when you actually see Kotaro hit her and just the reaction from everyone, that was so funny. I actually paused and I actually laughed for a good minute. That was just brilliant. If that was the only thing in this episode, like if it was just like a 2-minute episode of just that, I would have been okay with it and I would have said this was an amazing episode. It's so funny, I love it. But Kotaro in this episode, the old manager, he's an absolute treat. If he wasn't in this show, I really think the anime wouldn't be as good as it is, because he's the kind of guy who does give these emotional kind of speeches and gets the idols to do their performances, but he's an absolute asshole all at the same time. Like when everyone thinks like, okay, this is finally time, he's actually going to give us an emotional speech, he sprays waterproof shoe spray on the zombies so they don't melt in the rain. Like, this man is absolutely ridiculous. He'll go in, he'll break down a door after giving an emotional speech and prepping the other girl back up. He'll say, also fix the door while you're at it. He's an absolute lunatic, and that's what makes him so lovable, because on one hand, you're like, this guy actually, he is keeping this group together. He's actually giving the emotional speeches, but then on the other, you're just like, is an absolute prick, and I love it so much. This week's episode is the conclusion to the kind of two-part arc between Ai and Junko, one of which is kind of scared of lightning because that's how she died, and the other just isn't okay with the modern way of idols. And I actually like how they came to a pretty satisfying conclusion between the two. I mean, one of which is hiding away, wanting to quit the group, and the other is, trying to tackle her fear, and, very much it's the weather forecast is saying it's gonna rain, there's probably gonna be some thunderstorms, but she's trying her hardest not to give up. And I think the way they actually conclude it was actually really satisfying. I mean, the manager actually telling her that it's okay if you don't want to do photo shoots, if you don't want to do the modern way of being an idol, just go up and perform, and if anyone gives you any shit, just say I'm my own character, which was a really satisfying conclusion for her, because I am glad that they are going that way instead of just forcing her to change, because there's no reason why all of them would have to act the same way with fans. If anything, one of them being a bit more distant would probably gain them more fans, because that's a fetish right there of, oh my god, she's too good for us, worship me. Like, that's something these idol fans love. It absolutely is. So I'm glad they weren't trying to force Ai to change or force Junko to change any of these characters. It was more like adapt to the setting in your best way possible and see what you can do. And then with the whole getting struck by lightning, I mean, you saw that coming, 100%. I saw them getting struck by lightning coming. I didn't see them getting electrocuted and then them having like this voice filter and getting even more electrifying performances. Like, I didn't see that coming, which was absolutely a treat. And I just like how this arc was a bit different than what we traditionally see, because it was dealing more on the emotional trauma of the past, one of which is being killed by this force of nature that you can't control, and then the other just not able to adapt to the modern way of technology and idol performances and things like that. And they managed to blend the two in very interesting yet separate ways into this very satisfying performance where, really at this point, they're true idols. They were at a festival, people loved them. I mean, there's a reporter who keeps looking at them saying like, who is this? I recognize these people. So they definitely have the fame now that I think things are going to go pretty smoothly in terms of popularity, but because this is Zombieland Saga, it's not going to just be sunshine and rainbows. They definitely are going to have their hardships 100%, especially with a manager like Kotaro who is helming this project. You know things are going to go wild. But the overall comedy in this episode was really well done. Like, even though the van scene of getting hit and then just like the reaction is my favorite thing ever in this series, there was a lot of small moments that really built up into a lot of entertaining scenes, but surprisingly there was a lot of more kind of subtle and emotional scenes sprinkled off and on. Nothing that's going to make you shed a tear or things like that, but enough to make you feel like this is more than just a comedy series. This is actually trying to be an idol anime while also being the most over-the-top comedy zombie series that you probably will watch in the next few years, which I quite like. And something I keep seeing is whenever there are the 3D performances with this group, I often see how everyone's calling it like super mediocre, when really this is above average 3D for this performance. Like, it's not going to mirror some of the heavy hitter idol animes like Love Live or things like that, because they have a lot more time and polish for their performances, because that's all it is just these performances, these songs and dances. But personally, like, yeah, there's definitely more polish that could be done to these scenes, but I don't look at them as mediocre. They're actually pretty well detailed and they move fairly well. I mean, sure, you might look at some of the other performances and say, well, they were done in 2D, but a lot of them are just like focused on legs or more out there shots. Like when you're actually focusing on these girls dancing around in like all of them at the same time, these are the types of scenes that have to be done in 3D. I really don't think they're lackluster. I mean, everyone else seems to, but that's just my thoughts anyway on the matter, because I keep seeing it whenever the girls are doing their performance in 3D. Everyone like keeps saying how mediocre and how horrible it is, but like I've never looked at any of the 3D in this show and said, that's absolutely atrocious. I've seen far, far worse, and this is definitely above average in terms of 3D movements, especially for an idol anime like this. I thought it was pretty good. It's not going to be like Love Live 3D, but it's good enough. This episode was absolutely a treat. I don't know if this would be my favorite episode. I'm thinking it is, because it kind of had that balance of really great comedy and really great emotional directing, and I think this was probably my favorite episode with Kotaro in it, because he had so many unexpected moments, like especially like when he's barging in and giving the emotional prep talk. Like I know what to expect with that, but then when he actually sits down and he's actually giving that emotional speech, I was like, you know, even though he may be an asshole at times, he's kind of an asshole a lot of the times, he does realize when he does have to pull away and actually be a bit more compassionate, give that kind of prep talk saying like it's okay to feel this way, you don't have to push yourself, and actually give them breathing room, which it feels like any of these girls, if they actually did reach a breaking point with the way he's pushing them, it almost feels like he's trying to give them tough love. It feels like he would pull away and actually give them a helping hand, give them a hug, give them a pat on the back, instead of just always yelling in their face. As funny as that is, it's nice to see he is a character who isn't always just going to be that, and he is willing to be an actual manager and actually care for these girls, which it's really surprising. And I mean, at the end of the day, where can they go? They're all zombies. There's only his house. For better or worse, that's where they have to be. So I am glad that if they are going to be stuck there, push comes to shove, he will lend them that helping hand, which was a nice touch. Really, there was a lot of great moments in this episode. I definitely think seeing them electrified was probably the icing on the cake. Like the fact that they also layered their voice with this like electronic filter, that was just amazing. I love how there's so many moments that you look at and you say, how are people not realizing that these girls aren't normal? How is it possible to be struck by lightning and sing and perform afterwards and no one questions it? But it's Zombieland Saga, and it absolutely works because it is Zombieland Saga, and from episode 1 we knew this was going to be a ridiculous series that things just don't really make sense, but it's okay because of the style that it's going for. Really fun episode. I might even put this as my favorite episode of Zombieland Saga currently. I mean, next week's episode looks pretty fun. There was one shot of a bouncer looking guy. I don't know what we're getting next week, but it looks fun, same as always. Let me know whatever you thought down in that comment section below. Did you love it? Do you hate? Your favorite moment? Whatever you're feeling, let me know, and be sure to like the video if you did enjoy, and also hit that subscribe button if you want to see more content from me in the future. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.